Welcome to Wisdom Woman podcast. I believe that is in constant change and growth, not in perfection, that we find happiness. In this podcast, I'm going to be talking with top performance professionals about tools, techniques, new ideas on how to develop your communication skills, use your creative thinking, be a team player, manage your tasks like a pro, be motivated, become an expert on relationships, and a problem solver. Everything you need to be 5 stars in all areas of your life. My intention is to help you develop your skills and find balance between your professional and personal life. My name is Bettina Meyer-Flug, and I hope I can be your trusted advisor. Are you ready to be an empowered woman? Are you ready to take a chance on yourself? Go all in? On this episode, we're going to talk with Marta Spirk, the author of Empowered Woman, a book that is going to help you move from a place of fear to a place of faith instead. Marta teaches all the steps to become an empowered woman, mainly by sharing her own experience on how to get there. Throughout her personal journey, you're going to learn so much. So I invite you to be 100% present with us, and I promise that you will learn meaningful lessons today. One thing that I admire from Marta is that she's also born in Brazil and has a high touch when connecting to her clients. So welcome, Marta, to our show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to chat.
Thank you for being with us. Can you tell us about your what brought you here to United States?
Yes, well, what officially brought me once I moved was getting married. My husband is American, but I'd had this lifelong obsession and connection with the culture, with the language. Obviously, growing up in Brazil, you know this, there's a heavy influence of American movies, music, a lot of the culture. And I've always seen myself living here and was just really obsessed with the language. And ultimately, what helped with that connection, with a stronger connection, was through church. My mom is a pastor. She started coming to conferences here in the US. Several American ministers started going to Brazil to our church. And I started coming to the conferences too. And that's where I met my husband, was in a church conference in 2005.
That's so cool. And you guys got 3 babies. I heard you have triplets. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, and then in 2016, we finally heard the news. We'd been trying to get pregnant for over a year. We were living in Brazil at the time, so after we'd been married for 3 years, my parents finally convinced us, try it out in Brazil. Come live close to us. And while we were living there, we lived there for 3 years. I got pregnant with triplets, which was obviously 100% unexpected. I don't think any, and it's funny because ever since I've had triplets, people are like, I always dreamed of having triplets. I'm like, I don't even think that is a thing. I was just wanting one baby. And then we moved back to America, and that's really when my personal growth and the journey that I now share through my business and through my coaching began. Was after this life changing experience of becoming a mom to three right off the bat.
Oh mine. And you started your career translating and you speak wonderful English. Can you tell us a little bit about this? What you used to do and how you became a coach, this transition in your career?
Yeah, so for the longest time, I started teaching English when I was 14. So because I liked it so much, people would always tell me, "Oh, you know all the songs. How do you memorize the lyrics so well? How do you speak so well?" Even teachers would tell me, "You're so brilliant." And finally, I started helping people like prepare for tests, for like standardized tests, and getting paid for it. I would tutor them at my home or go to their house. And because of church, I started interpreting too. So it wasn't just teaching or translating written documents and things for the church. It began with helping people with the spoken word, especially in church as well. And officially at 18, I became the interpreter for large church conferences. And then I knew what I was going to do for my major, what I wanted to pursue for college. And so I earned my bachelor's in translation for English and also French. So I learned French in the process, which was fun. And then when I moved to the US after getting married, I got my master's in linguistics. So it was all about the languages. But then after having the triplets, I felt this pull in a different direction. It's like I still want to have this teaching role, this motivational role that I had both as a teacher and as an interpreter because I was interpreting for church conferences. It was almost like it was me being the preacher and the minister. It wasn't my message, but I was having to convey it like it was. It was a very interesting experience because I got a lot of the accolades and the respect that the minister was getting because people wouldn't have heard that message if it weren't for me. So it was very interesting position to be in as an 18-year-old, and even in my early 20s to have that amount of responsibility, but that amount of admiration as well. Even to this day, people will find me on social media or in the YouTube videos from those sermons, and they will say, I am so grateful for you because I hear your voice all the time. Your voice has been in my house throughout the years, and I have no idea of this because it's just out there. But then after having the triplets, and with growing up in church too, I knew and I grew up with this idea of you have a purpose, you have a calling, you have specific gifts that you've been giving since birth that you are supposed to leverage and to share with people. It's your responsibility. And I wasn't really sure what that was. And that's ultimately what I describe in my book as well, is that this journey post triplets was a journey of finding who am I when I'm not sharing somebody else's message as an interpreter, who am I, and who am I going to be teaching my kids? What as a person am I going to be imparting and transferring to them? And the responsibility of I'm not doing this once, I'm doing it three at a time. So I better know what I'm doing as much as possible and be intentional with it. And I actually started with network marketing. That was the first opportunity that I saw of me really finding what it was that I wanted to do. And it was in network marketing that I learned about personal development. Because growing up in church, self help really is frowned upon. It's kind of like off limits. It's not really something that people encourage. So it was interesting that I went that route, kind of sneaking through, finding that my thoughts matter, the things that I say matter, my attitude matters, which were things that I was taught in church, but through a different lens. So I agreed with it. And being a teacher and motivation and being motivational was also very ingrained in me. So that's how it all started. I kind of branched off of network marketing, started my own podcast, and my message has morphed throughout the years because I focused on moms on the beginning, like self-esteem for moms. Then I decided, no, I'm speaking to women in general. I don't want to label them as moms because we're not just moms. We're so many different things. And eventually I outed myself in 2020 and I said, I want to speak to entrepreneurs. And that was a bold move because I didn't feel like I was qualified. Even though I had been doing it for a few years, my income had not really grown. And I felt like I wasn't successful enough to be teaching somebody anything or entrepreneurs anything. But after I took that step in faith, really, things started growing and people started noticing my message more. And I started talking more about visibility and marketing. And that was super helpful as well to add some more of a tangible nature to what I do that tends to be more um, intangible when we talk about mindset and behavior and personal growth.
By listening to your story, I have the feeling that you put your heart in everything that you do when you were translating for those church events. Probably you started your self growth and your awareness over there, don't you think?
Oh yeah, 100% because I was in front of people. I was already being judged. Even though it was a very welcoming environment because they literally needed me, it was when I started doing what many entrepreneurs start doing in their 30s, right? Of I'm going to be talking about my business, I'm going to be talking about myself. There I was at 18, being judged by other people that knew English too. So that was something that I had to learn. I remember so vividly one of my first meetings that I interpreted for. We didn't really have the right equipment. So everyone was learning as we went because we hadn't done this before. So I needed to have an equipment to be able to hear directly, kind of like in a concert when you're performing a song. You need to be able to hear it because I needed to hear the message clearly so that I could interpret when other people are talking, when other people are cheering. It's tough and it has to be fast, you know? And I remember I couldn't hear the ending of certain words, so I would kind of guess what it was to interpret to save time so that I didn't have to ask every single time. And I remember at one point one of the ministers said, "This is what made me human." And for whatever reason I thought he said humid. And it didn't make sense. And I translated it that way, and I just felt so awful, and then afterwards, people came and said, "You're doing your best. It's okay." And it just, it destroyed me. I felt like I was like, I'm making so many mistakes. I'm not doing that good of a job. So I agree with you, and that's such a great point for me to reflect on as well. That it started then because I was being vulnerable. I was. Whenever you put yourself in front of people, you are allowing yourself to be criticized, and it started then for sure.
Yeah, it's so important to laugh about our mistakes. I'm going to tell you a story, Marta, very fun. I came to United States to live with my aunt for a while to learn English, and I was working there. She still lives in New Jersey. And then I wanted to visit New York. So she said, "Oh, New York is very busy. Be careful. Everywhere you go, please ask people, 'Excuse me.'" And then I was on the subway, but I didn't quite understand her very well.
Yeah.
So I was on the subway saying, "Squeeze me, squeeze me, squeeze
Oh,
me."
that's awesome. I
And
love
then
it.
I came back home and said to my aunt, "It didn't work very well."
Oh, poor thing. And that's how you learn. I love
But
it.
can you give us some tips on how to face our fears? Because I think everybody that comes from another country speaking English is a challenge. How can we face this fear that's always in present in our lives?
I think one of the main things that has helped me so much is understanding that this fear is really grounded in a fear of rejection. That if and it shows up in many areas of life, but I feel like with the language because it's something that I experienced, and that's the reason why I prided myself in sounding American. No one would know. I don't want anyone to know that I'm Brazilian. That's why I'm going to make sure I have absolutely no accent. And then to learn, my husband's like, I actually like accents. I think they're sexy. Why don't you just lean in? And it's like, no, it was that fear of being the outcast and fear of rejection. And once you understand fear for what it is, it's easier for you to overcome it. And and with that, what I have learned, especially in the last year, is that there is really no rejection. There is only self rejection. There really is no judgment. There's only self judgment. What? No. What do you mean? People have told me to my face that they are rejecting me. People have told me to my face and that they're criticizing me or that I've done something wrong. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, especially intentionally. I'm saying the way you receive it or the choice to receive the judgment, the choice to receive the rejection is always ours. And so the people that we admire that go on out and do crazy stuff, the reason why they do that is that it's not that they're not afraid, but is that they're focusing on something else. They're not focusing on the rejection. They're not focusing on the criticism. They understand that it's going to come, but the way they handle it is with their choice of looking at the benefits of what it is that they're doing. Because even for me, being so, I forget the word, what word that would be in, I guess, very forward. I'm very forward. Like whatever it is that people say, do you want to do it? I'm a yes person. People have described me that. I'm a yes person. Like, do you want to try this out? Like, do you want to be called out of the audience to go on stage and do something? That's me. Please call me. Please, put me in front of people. Like I am that kind of person. That does not mean I don't get nervous, right? And that does not mean that there aren't things I'm afraid of and that I put off doing. And that's something that I really learned last year is that publishing my book was something I was very afraid of. And so understanding that there are still things that hold me back, but those are the very things I need to challenge myself to do because that's what's going to give me growth. That's what I mean by you can overcome fear when you make the conscious intentional choice to look at the positive outcome of what you're going to be doing. It's not that you're going to pretend that there will be no judgment, pretend that there will be no fear. all of it is going to be present. But ultimately, you're going to choose not to focus on the rejection. You're going to choose not to focus on the judgment, and instead focus on what the lesson or the benefits that you're going to get out of stepping out in faith.
Yeah, I agree with you. I always teach my clients when talking about fear, um, the lesson that I learned in my life. If we are moms, we already passed through the birth. It's very painful. But whenever you know what is the pain about, for example, you know how it is to have a baby and you will decide to have a second one, you know what is you're going to face. So I did public speaking training for a whole year, and we used to meet every Saturday. And the way we overcome the fear was by facing it,
Hmm.
by feeling it. So if you know how your body reacts when you're having fear, how do you feel inside? You know, the butterflies on your belly, all the sensations you have whenever you have fear. If you get used to those sensations and able to manage those sensations by breathing and doing some exercise, and like you said, focusing on forward, on the future, on whatever you want, you'll be able to deal with that. It's the same thing than dealing with the pain of a birth of a child. You know, you deal with it, you learn how to deal with it. So if you learn how to deal with the consequences of the fear, everything that you feel inside, you'll be able to better manage and overcome. So every time you start feeling it, just let it feel
Yeah,
and move forward. And this works. I can tell it's not easy to record podcasts, it's not easy to put your face out, but you get used to it only if you practice, only if you
yes.
bring self awareness.
Yeah. And I love that. And remind yourself, this is one of the things that I remind myself too. It's not my first rodeo. It may not be the exact same situation, but I've been here before. And that's one of the things that I describe in my book as well, is that yeah, having triplets was not something I'd ever experienced before, but it wasn't my first rodeo in terms of letting go of expectations, having to embrace something new. Like when I moved, from Brazil, I wanted it. I wanted it really, really badly, but that doesn't mean that I didn't grieve leaving behind my parents, my culture, my language. It was a choice to let go of that and to embrace the new. And the same thing with triplets. I wasn't expecting it. I had so many different plans for how my pregnancy was going to look out or my life. But then I chose to look at the positive effects as well of having three at the same time.
Before we start talking about your book, why don't we talk a little bit about creating a new business in a new country?
Mhm.
How was this challenge for you? How did you um, manage this change of working in networking marketing and creating your own business? Do you have any tips for the female entrepreneurs that are listening to us who wants to start a brand new business and they are foreigners or even from United States? How to start a brand new business?
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur before, but in looking back in my journey, I was, because I was self-employed by tutoring people and teaching languages and even working as an interpreter. I did have jobs working as a teacher, like working for somebody else, but it had already started and I didn't see it like that. And again, like that association is so helpful in moving you forward to understand I've done something like this before. It's not the same degree of intensity, but I'm capable. It empowers you and it gives you courage. And I feel like the whole process is really embracing the idea of you don't know what you don't know and nobody starts at the top, and being okay with being a beginner. And and it's so interesting that I started my business right at the same time that I became a mom, because I started my business with network marketing when they were 9 months old. And so it was such a double whammy because it was so many emotions right at the same time, because I was raising them, remembering my own childhood and the things that happened to me when I was young that I resented my parents for. And now I was the parent and I was seeing these things happening and thinking, I want to do it differently because I want to make sure they don't have those same feelings. And at the same time, I was building a business and
Oh my
thinking about my clients, right? How do I
God.
want them to experience this? And how do I experience things as a client as well? If I want them to take certain actions, I have to be that person to my mentors as well, because I am modeling. Everything is about being a role model in different ways, right? And so I feel like this whole process is, and as they say, and I say, and I agree with it, is that it's a personal growth journey. When you look at entrepreneurship as more than opening up a business, understanding that it is your opportunity to really know yourself. It's your opportunity to take off all of the masks, to strip yourself off of all the things the layers that you've put on to shield yourself from rejection, to shield yourself from judgment. And I love that you brought up me standing on stage interpreting as the beginning of that, because it really was. Starting your own business is choosing not to hide, because as an employee, you can hide behind that company. At the end of the day, it's the company's problem. I clock out. When you're a business owner, you're constantly there. And talk about the parallels with motherhood. When you're a mom, it's always there. You can't just pretend. You can't clock out. Although with business, I do encourage you to set specific boundaries and times that with motherhood at times it's hard to do. But I feel like there's a lot of parallels and things that I borrowed from motherhood and vice versa to apply to the business that were really helpful to me. And I feel like the ultimate lesson and advice that I can really give is, don't see this as the money that you're going to make. See this as you unlocking your gifts, sharing it with the world, understanding that it's going to be a rocky road. It's going to be painful because it's growth, and growth can be hard at times, right? It's going to involve the rejection. It's going to involve people asking for refunds, people telling you no. But that's what's going to make you grow and what's going to make you learn. And so, taking it as another life experience that will expedite the process of growth, I feel like choosing entrepreneurship is willingly choosing to expedite your growth, because there's many lessons in the process.
Oh, I love what you said about enjoying the journey. And when I was creating my happiness journey coaching program, that's an online training, the name was supposed to be happiness, um, journey to happiness. And then I thought I happiness is not a destination, it's something you have to enjoy while you're in, like the entrepreneurship that you were explaining. So we changed to happiness journey, because you should be happy all the time. And it's the same thing in the path of becoming an entrepreneur. You should enjoy every step, the beginning step, the middle step, the high end step, every step of the way needs to be fun, because like you said, you're flourishing yourself, you're blooming.
Well, and also I feel like intentionally challenging yourself, like I said, to embrace being a beginner, because there's always something else that you can learn. There's always a next level. We tend to look at people and think, oh, they've arrived, right? There's nothing else that they need to learn. There's nothing else that they need to overcome. But even millionaires, billionaires have problems. In fact, they have more problems because there's more things that they're having to juggle. So this romanticized version of, when I make this certain amount, when I sign up these many clients, things are going to be different. That's what stunts your growth. And that's what prevents you from enjoying the journey, because you're never there. Whereas if you learn that you are there, because here and now is all you've got, then you can choose to be happy and to enjoy the ride, and to really look at yourself. It's kind of like what they say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I really come to embrace that. You should be choosing your rooms more wisely so that there's room for you to grow.
Yes, they said we are the average of the 5 people we most spend time with.
Mhm.
So pay attention on who you're spending your time with.
Yeah, exactly.
So congratulations for your new book. I have here on my hand. I think I was one of the first one to buy this amazing book. I recommend all of you to check it out, Empowered Woman. And I read it through, and I think it's amazing. Can you tell our listeners about the 5 steps You notice yourself, listen yourself, forgive yourself, and transform yourself.
Yes, empower yourself and transform yourself. Yes, so these were the steps that I realized enabled women to really find this empowerment or to empower themselves that culminates into transformation. Because even in my network marketing days, because I started with Beachbody, which is a fitness company, that I love the metaphors that you can find in the fitness and health world to your personal growth because they're very tangible, they're visible, right? In the before and afters, when people weight loss, you're like, oh my gosh, how is that even possible? And that's what we experience within all of the time. It's just hard to really see. Um, but just the idea that we focus so much on the end. We focus on that transformation. This is what I want to look like, right? This is what I want to have. But you don't understand that there's a road to get there. In fact, we want to skip the road. I don't care about the road because we don't realize that it's on the road that we learn the lessons. It's not in just becoming that final product, project, whatever it is. And so instead of just saying, this is how you transform, I encourage women to look at 4 preliminary steps that need to happen before you even get into transforming. And then to also help you see that transformation will probably look a lot different than what you have in mind once you go through those steps. Because to me, transformation really is becoming more self-accepting, really loving yourself for who you are now. Because something else that I like to use and I borrow from the fitness world that say you can't hate yourself skinny. I believe you can't hate yourself happy and you can't hate yourself successful either. So how can you in your journey to your goal, yes, please have goals because that's what keeps you in forward movement, but how can you find ways to enjoy where you are now? How can you find ways to appreciate where you are now, the weaknesses and the strengths, right? So the first step is called notice yourself because I really see this as a journey of a loving relationship with who you are. And when you compare that to courtship, to starting to have a crush on somebody, the first thing you do is that you notice them. They stand out somehow in the crowd for you. And you start paying attention to, the way that they move, their little quirks. You become curious about their favorite things. Why not do that with yourself? It has to start there. It can't start with, I want to be somebody else. No, wait a minute. Who are you now? Let's look at that first. And that's how your definition of transformation and where you want to go starts shifting. But it has to start with these steps. And then I talk about listening to yourself, which is monitoring your self-talk. What does your conversation with yourself mostly consist of? And for many of us, most of the time, it's negative. It's putting yourself down. It's saying you need to be different. You need to be somebody else, right? So if you're starting this journey of encouragement and empowerment, the self-talk needs to be different. It needs to be, hey, I know I have these faults, but I love myself anyway, right? Hey, I just messed up. How can I do this differently? And be more of a cheerleader to yourself than a nagging boss. Then we move into forgiveness, which is a natural next step, because once you see all these things about yourself, the temptation is to beat yourself up and say, see, I have these weaknesses. I have these problems. There's no hope for me. And it's like the transformation is as far away as it ever was. And that's where it's important to forgive because we have certain expectations, and 9 times out of 10 things don't happen the way we expect, and the way we plan. And there's lots of forgiveness for others as well. So in my journey, like I said, because of raising triplets at the same time, I started understanding that there was lots of forgiveness for my family, for my parents, for my mom that I needed to release to be able to be the mom that I wanted to be for my children. Then we move into empower yourself, because once you're able to forgive yourself for your weaknesses, you're able to see your strengths shine so much brighter than before because they're not being clouded by your own self-judgment. And then what I encourage in the empower yourself is a practice of a brag book, because many of us know what a gratitude journal is, but you'll notice that you hardly ever are in your own gratitude journal. So let's change that and start thinking about things you're proud of, because every single day there are things you should be proud of yourself for doing, whether it be putting away the laundry, remembering a friend's birthday, or big goals right? Landing a promotion at your job, landing a big client, big and small, all those things need to be recognized and celebrated. And all of that leads into transformation. Looking back and recognizing, man, I'm pretty awesome. And it's even more awesome that I have taken the time to see it, to acknowledge it, and to celebrate myself for it.
Whoa, I love it. I can't wait to dig more into your book. Thank you so much. And I saw you mention also about your Enneagram. And
Yes.
for those who doesn't know, this is a personality test. How important it was for you to be aware about your native talents?
Yes, I'm so glad that you brought that up because I forgot. That's what I bring up in the very first step, and I sprinkle through the entire book. Is I recommend people to use a self-assessment tool to understand themselves better in that process of noticing yourself. So, like you would with a person that you're crushing on, what are they like? How does their laugh sound? What is their favorite color? Do the same thing for you. And self-assessment tools are so helpful for that. And by far, the main tool that I have used in my personal growth journey and in my business has been the Enneagram. For those of you who may not be familiar, it's a personality framework. There are 9 different types with different characteristics. All of them are interconnected. We have bits and pieces of all of them, but all of us have dominant traits, dominant motives, dominant behavior patterns that I believe are a combination of nature and nurture. Things you were innately, born with, and things that your environment helped foster. So that unique combination made you who you are. And it's not a matter of putting yourself in a box, labeling or stereotyping yourself. It's understanding that you are being seen. People out there recognize that there are people like you in the world. And the sense of belonging. I'm not alone. I'm not an alien. There are other people that see the world the same way, which allows for that self acceptance, which allows for that self forgiveness and the empowerment and the transformation. So, yeah, the Enneagram and self assessment in general has been huge for my growth and for my coaching.
Wow, thank you. I would like to share with our audience here that I do a self-assessment tool called Triads Test. It's an amazing test where you can quickly, in 20 minutes, answer a questionnaire. You're going to receive a 28 report about yourself, similar to the Enneagram that she just described. And we can schedule a 1-hour session just to go through over the self-assessment, how can you use this information to leverage yourself, and mainly to interact with other people who see the world with different lens, like she said. So if you want to learn more, go to my website, www.witty.tech, and schedule a session. I can tell you more about it. And how can people get in touch with you, Marta? Is there anything that you recommend them to do?
Yes. Well, I would love for you to hop on my website, martaspirk.com. You'll find information on my podcast, the Empowered Woman Podcast. You'll also see more information on my book, The Empowered Woman. And I also have a membership called the Empowered Woman School. And if you purchase the book, you get a 30-day free trial into the membership to meet the community of amazing women entrepreneurs that are in there. Check out the huge database that I have with several recordings of trainings, guest experts, and all of the things on personal growth, visibility, and profits for women entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Marta. I love working with you. I hope to have more opportunities for us to do things together. Thank you for being in our podcast today. Thank you for listening to Wisdom Woman Podcast. To hear past and future episodes, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast channel. We appreciate your reviews. To give us suggestions for future show topics, please write to us at podcast@witty.tech. If you're interested in having me as your trusted advisor, schedule a strategic coaching session on my website, www.witty.tech.